Hello and welcome back to the Alteryx Weekly Challenge. This is challenge number 77 and it's about extending spatial lines. I've actually been thinking about this one over the weekend, and my original plan for it, I read it just before I logged off on Friday, and I've been thinking about it all weekend, and I was absolutely certain I was going to use trigonometry to fix this, and I've spent a couple of hours looking at it, and I can't use trigonometry to fix this. For some reason, I can't get my high school trigonometry to the level that is required. I can't work out why that is, because I'm just getting a different results. If I do it on a calculator, I can seem to get it, but doing it in Alteryx seems to be beyond me. So, but I've been looking around. There is another way you can do it. So what we've got to do is we've got a line, and then we've got to extend that line by, in this case, 5 miles. And we've got to have the original line and the new line, and it's extended in a straight line, both ends of the original line. So so we need the name of the line, the original spatial line, the two new ones for each line, and the length of the line, the new length of the line. So is that the whole line, or is it the individual parts? Oh, okay, well, let's find out. So here's the work file. You start it, so all you've got is these 3 spatial objects. If we run it, we'll be able to see these are on a map. There's no map on it, but it's basically 3 lines. So we need to work out an extending on either side of each of these lines. Okay, so the first thing I think we need to do is look at the information, spatial information from these 3 lines, because we've got to work out the endpoints that we can then extend from. So in the information there's this endpoints as spatial. We also have the X and Y fields, which is what I was trying to use for the trigonometry part, but was struggling. It also gives me the length. Interesting, so I could probably use that at the end, or I can use a distance calculator for that. Okay, so let's bring that in. The other thing we are going to need is a text input. So we're going to need, let's call it the extension, and then we'll start with 5, and we'll need to bring that in, because the reason I'm doing that in, not hard coding or writing it straight in as 5, is because we want to be able to change it. We can then stick an interface tool of this to be able to change it later on. Now the first thing we want to do is, now that we have the end, start and end to parts of this setup, is to put what we call a trade area. Basically we put it around the start, and we want 5. We don't want 5. What we want is to pull the extension field, and we'll do it in miles because that's what we're asking for, and we'll run that. So that should give us, I'll just bring in a browse so we can see what we're doing. That should give us, yeah, so we've got a point of 5 miles around the end, or rather the start of each line. Okay, now what I was thinking of doing is that we take the distance from the end point to all of the points around this circle, and the longest point will be the one that leads straight, continues is the longer, is the extension of it. And then we do the same for the other end, and then go from the start, and that will be the one that's from here. So that's the theory. Let's see what we can do. So let's extend that and give ourselves some room. So first thing to do is to split the circle trade area into its parts. So let's spatial trade area, and we'll split it into points. Okay, so what that gives us is a number of points around the circle we can then join to, and if we then find the distance, so that's now split it up. Now what we want to find is the distance between all of those is split spatial object and the end point. Okay, so that will give us the the longest. We don't need the direction, don't need the degrees, miles will do, and that will give us the distance from one to the other. So if we look here, yeah, we suddenly have all of the distances. Now what we can do here is then just pick off the longest distance. So if we do a transform, we can just summarize, and what we want to do is summarize the label, and then so we group by because we've got 3 lines, and we want to take the max distance, and then if we join that back in, and all I'm using this really is as a filter to remove. So if I filter on max distance and max distance, we can then get rid of the fields. We're actually not going to bring them in, but we're going to run it, and that should leave us with just 3 rows. Okay, so that gives us the original line, and then a point 5 miles further along on that original line. So here, 5 miles further along. 5 miles further along. Okay, so now we can. All we need to do is join up this spatial point. So let's rename this so we know what we're doing, because we're going to have to do it again. So this, and we'll get rid of some of the fields we don't need. So we don't need this sequence number. We don't need this distance. We need the original spatial objects. We need the start and end. We need the extension. We don't need the radius size. We need the split one, but we're going to call this the start extension. Okay. So I can never remember. Oh, it is today. Okay, so that gives us just the bits that we need. Okay, so we can create in Spatial. What we can do is create a line, build poly. So no, we don't want a polyline. What we want to do is use a formula tool. You can do that. You can create a line in there. We'll call it a start line, and then we can Spatial, and then create line. Okay, so point 1 is the start extension. Or the start, and then the point 2 is the start extension. Okay, so that will give us a spatial object, and we run that, see what we get. Yeah, so now we have these lines coming off from each of the ends. So now we just need to repeat that for the end. Yeah, now we have the other end of the line. So now what we've got to do is work out the total length from here to here. So is that right? Or we want to learn that is it the individual ones? I think it's the total. So if we measure, so if we bring in information, so Spatial, and we bring in another one, right, that will give us, so the element we want to do is start line, and we want to know the length in miles. No, it's the total length of the thing, isn't it? Because we already know it's 5 miles. New length of line, new spatial object, got that. Original spatial object, got that. Name of the file. So it is from the whole thing. Okay, so we can measure. So we do want for each of them we want the points either end. Okay, and will give us, let's just run that one. So that will give us a point on either end. Okay, so we've got start 2 and end 2. Okay, so that's confusing, but I think we can go with that, and then because we just want to know the distance between 2 points, we can do that again on the end line. Okay, and we go from end to end is what I'm thinking is what we then need to measure. Let me just check that. So if we go from end 2 to end 3, we don't want the direct, but we want the distance, and we can test that in a sec. So that gives us distance of 0. Why does that give you a distance of 0? Oh, because we've created an endpoint. So what have we got on the map? I'll bring in this browse. Okay, so we now have points. Do we have the points before? We did have the point before. I don't need this. I'm losing the plot. We don't need that. So what we can do is we've got the start extension point and the end extension point. So that's what we actually want to measure the distance between. Right. See if that works. Yeah, there we go. And we have it. So that measures the distance between that and that. Perfect. Now, what we need to do is turn this into, so that gives us all of the points that were asked for, the label, the original spatial object, the new spatial objects, and the start line, end line, and the distance, full distance. Okay, so now let's turn this into some sort of application. So the thing to do there is we need an output, so we're going to do this on a map. So we'll just put this on the map, and we'll put a reference. We'll put back streets, and I think that's what we'll do, and then just render it. Now we could spend a lot of time and put out all this information, lengths and stuff like that, but I think if we just, for the purpose of time here, we'll just render it as a HTML file with the map. Now what we want to do is create an interface so that we can change the number. Maximum could be 100. Increment 1, we'll default it to 5 because that's the number we have on there. And the question is how long to extend. Okay, now we need to put an action in. Connect. There we go. That will allow it to actually change this number. So if we update cell default 1 and 1, that's one in there, and then we test it. Okay, let's change it to 3. Run that and see what we get. Okay, we get an output of some sort. Okay, that looks like it's shorter than the 5 before. Let's run it again and see if we can make it longer this time. I know 9. Finish, and then that should then run through. Again, we've got generated something. Yeah, that's much longer now. Way into Denver International Airport. Not sure about right under the airport runway by the looks of it. Anyway, there you go. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.